Yeah, what's that? Oh, no, I'm there. Am I live, guys? Was I not live? Okay. Hopefully I was live because I was just talking for the last 6 minutes. But one of the things that I learned that this by just the brute force in the dental profession of actually creating a coaching club, run a live event, getting people to the live event. How did we get people to the live event? We ran webinars, teleseminars, and we had a weekly rhythm. Every Wednesday night, we ran a teleseminar or a webinar, and then we put them into the next layer up. Okay. And the most important part, and I hired a lot of consultants, Joe Bauer, Tim Paulson, James Malinchak, so many great minds. And there's so many great minds right now that are just really, really valuable people that are brilliant. Okay. And one of the biggest things that if I was doing a live event and I'm selling a mastermind, one of the first things I'd ask you is like, look, do you have success stories? And you'd be like, yeah, and of course we have success stories. Okay. And if you're brand new, it's okay too, but there's ways to do it. Is with your new people that are attending your event or coming out to see you, whether it's virtual or in person, I would send them my time collapsing book. I know that sounds like a total pitch for my own book, but guess what? I totally overlooked this until we were out there, and my whole talk was based on time collapsing. Well, what's time collapsing? Well, it's the 5 most important principles that anyone has to follow in order to achieve their goals quicker. And you might say like, well, what are those steps, Ed? And I'm just like, well, it's exactly what I teach from stage. And so what I do is go in, set the stage and say, look, the number one most important thing that you have to have if you plan on being successful in this industry, so whatever industry you're the expert in, number one is you need to have a model. And that model, and I use examples, I have a whole framework on that. I do talk about how Kobe modeled Michael Jordan. And I do kind of joke and say, yes, this is an overused example. And if you're a Lakers fan, I know you're probably mad that I'm not using LeBron, but you guys can cry about it. I mean, we have fun with it. But one of the things that Kobe Bryant said about Michael Jordan that was different than everybody else was that Michael was strong. When he came into the league, he studied all the people that were in the league, and he noticed that were great shooters, great players. And he's like, Michael had bigger legs. He was ripped. And then he's like, well, what was Michael doing that no one else was doing? So he asked the question. So he found his model. And then I have a couple of like off tangents that I teach here is that once you find your model, you have to be literal with the model. Depending on your niche or industry, this story goes deeper. Like for example, if we tell you to run a 3-step reactivation campaign, like whatever your industry might be, and then you decide to just run 1 step, you're not doing what the model does. You're just making up your own stuff. And that's why you keep failing, right? And so it's easier for me to say those things than sometimes the leader or expert protects like their relationship. Number 2 is you got to have a mentor. And so the story I continues is like, well, where did Michael Jordan get so strong from? Anyone know who Tim Grover is? Yeah, Tim Grover wrote the book Relentless. It's one of the best books. That's actually another great book if you're going to send gifts to your people before they get there. But then Kobe what'd he do? He went directly to the mentor, right? And sometimes your mentor and your model are different people. Why? Because the model might be able you could replicate what they do or model what they do sequentially and based on their value systems, belief systems, and we go into like that a little bit more. I teach accelerated learning in that principle. But then the second thing is we go, hey, well, the mentor, their job is to see around the corner for you. And sometimes seeing around the corner for you is not being the model, but actually being above the model and seeing where you're at and seeing what other resources you need. Okay. So for example, that could be Phil Jackson or that could be Tim Grover in that scenario. Now, once I make fun of myself by bringing up Michael Jordan, the room laughs and chuckles. And then I use examples of myself coaching people or stuff we've learned. And then, myself with my 7 kids, I go into how people learn differently and why that's important. So anyhow, if you're sitting there being like, God, I don't want to hear that silly analogy, but didn't you notice the analogy is a little bit different than what you probably heard before? Now, number 3 is, and this is super, super important, and bear with me, I'm going to give you the punchline here in a second, is that the third part is you have to have a tribe. And the reason is because iron sharpens iron. And there's a law of osmosis. Proximity equals success. And I use this a couple different analogies, but one of them is like, hey, if you're not in a, if you're tired, you want to work out, or you don't want to work out, what is your first job? Your first job is just to get to the gym. Okay. Get to the gym. It's why I like doing classes, because if I commit to a class and I know there's people that are expecting me to be there, I show up. And then the second thing is, once I'm there, through osmosis, I now am moving, inertia's been broken, I have more success. The other thing we found is that in masterminds, and this is true, by the way, for any of you that are in them, is that when people actually have a timeline that they're going to be at a live event or going to be on the next phone call or whatever it might be, they get more done in the 24 hours, 72 hours prior to that event than they may have done in the last, 90 days, sadly, right? And so the focus of why you got to have a tribe is that it allows you to implement, it allows you to focus, it holds you accountable, not only to yourself, but to other people. And you get to contribute and make other people better, which is a super powerful, by the way, super powerful part of all of this stuff is that if you're contributing to other people, it actually fills the soul, makes you feel more valuable, kind of validates some parts that maybe you have a little bit of doubt, a little bit of inadequacy, and this kind of flatlines or get rid some of that. So it's like, hey, you're super successful, great, you get to contribute more, and that contribution makes you better. Great. You're just starting out, good. You're gonna latch on, you're gonna just hitch your trail to somebody up here so they can help elevate you, which brings me to the fourth principle that I love teaching. It's my favorite principle. It's the leapfrog theory of success. And that theory of success, and this is all in the book, by the way. That's why I said one of the first things you can do is send this to people, or just give them at the live event, or just give it to them free. I really don't care. My point is that if they start believing these concepts, they're gonna buy in. They're gonna realize right away that they are in the wrong, like they don't have those things, which means they're going to already start selling themselves. Cool, I need to have a model. Do I have a model? Am I following them literally? Am I following the principles that Ed just said? No. Do I have a mentor? Well, I sort of do. I read a lot of books. I make fun of just getting free stuff on YouTube. I like you, YouTube. You're the best. But I always go into like the payment is the transformation happens in the transaction, and that all progress comes after the payment. And I'm obliterating objections for the next day, by the way, on those. Fourth principle, I got to leave here in like 7 minutes, so I'm talking fast. Fourth principle is leapfrog theory of success. And that goes back to, people go crazy over this. This goes back to Robert Ringer's book, Winning Through Intimidation, came out like 1976. They changed the name to Intimidation. Robert Ringer said, hey, he created this thing called leapfrog theory of success. And he said, you have no moral obligation to work your way through the ranks. But at any given point, you can decide to jump to the top of any niche, any industry, any field, and go straight to where you want to get your goal. You do not have to work your way up through the ranks. And then I asked the whole group, I go, by the way, where is it more crowded? At the top of the pyramid, or at the bottom couple of rungs moving up? And they're all like, oh, it's at the bottom. Yes, all the competition is at the bottom, and they're the ones that don't. They're like lemmings. They don't, or not like lemmings. What's the animal that like grabs you and they all like kill each other because they don't let each other move up and get out of the hole or something like that? Lemmings are the ones that all follow the cliff, right? So the point is that at any time you can decide to become successful. So if you're sitting in the room, and this is super important to understand, this is a buyer permission frame. So if you're sitting in the room and you're questioning whether, because you're seeing other people in the room who seem successful, and you feel like you're doing imposter syndrome right now, you see, I'm alleviating an inadequacy. So we're creating some gap by identifying the core principles of the fast achievers that are in the room. But then we're also teaching them a leapfrog theory of success principle, which alleviates anxiety. And that's where like the warmth and like, oh, I'm in the right place, I'm feeling good, this is the right environment for me. This happens virtually as well, everyone. So anyhow, so this frame is really powerful. So leapfrog theory of success guaranteed will get people super revved up and super excited to be there. The other thing that I like doing on day one, you got to be on day one, because if you do it on day two, right before your pitch, it's too close to that. We should already have people on day two ready to buy, like just through our sideways sales process. We get them ready to buy by hitting some of these things out of the gate. So what I do is I list out all the objections they're going to have. They're going to talk about time. I'm too busy to be in another mastermind. I'm too busy to go to these events. I'm too busy to sign up for something else. So that's the time objection, right? And so one simple little story that I like to say is, okay, let me ask a question, everybody. Let me ask a question. Okay, cool. If we're driving in a car and there's two cars and one's going 50 miles per hour and the other one's going 30 miles an hour, okay? And the one's going 50, one's going 30. Which one's going to get there faster? And I'm like, how many believe the 30 mile per hour one's going to get there faster? And like 2 people raised their hand this past week. It was pretty funny. You should kind of know it's a trick question, right? And anyhow, so then I say, well, how many think 50? And the whole room raised their hand. I'm like, well, I go, I'm sorry, I didn't provide enough context. I'm like, what if the person who's driving 50 miles per hour is on a country road and they don't have a GPS? Like, I don't know about you guys, but I've been driving Southwest or around our lake house, driving in the Indiana back roads. The corn's high. I think I'm going Southwest. Turns out I was going like Northeast. How many of you have ever done that before? Whole room raises their hand. They laugh. And I go, okay, cool. But what if you're driving 30 miles per hour and you have the GPS and you're on the highway, and who's going to get there faster? Well, the 30 mile per hour one is always going to get there faster than the 51 that's zigzagging, right? And so the reason why you invest in masterminds and the reason why you find a model first, mentor model, actually, and you got to be in the tribe. The reason you're doing that is because you're not investing the money to get a little bit of time. You're actually buying 30 years of that person's wisdom that they've accumulated so that you can skip the line and you don't have to do the same. You don't have to hit the same problems. So when you decide to move forward in these types of events, you're not investing time, you're getting time back. Okay, so that's just one frame. So that's the time frame. And then we do talk about money. And it's different in every industry because of the price point. Like, so if I'm selling something for 3,000 or 1,000, but for sure, one of the things that we'll do is we'll minimize the dollar amount per day, bring it all the way down. Okay, so if it's $1,000 a day, it's something like $33 a day it's going to cost you. And I always make the joke, like, I guarantee if I looked at what your daily habits are, you're already spending it on coffee, you're already spending it on Netflix, you probably got 30 other things on your credit card that you're already spending the money. But why not invest in yourself, the most important asset first? You know, we'll minimize that. If it's going after a niche, and we could have done this actually better last week. Now that I'm saying this out loud, is if the average value of a client, a patient, or whatever it might be, is say 3,000, 5,000, 7,000, or the average gain on something. Like, I was just on a phone call with somebody who's in crypto, and it's like, well, if he can give an analysis of like your potential gain, if you're at this level. I mean, let's just say we do worst case scenario and you get that gain, and that happens over 6 months or 1 year. There's no promises, but let's just say worst case scenario type situation. And then you use that dollar amount and you say, okay, cool. Would you be willing to go into that at this and trade $1 for $2 or $1 for $10, right? Not a dollar for dollar exchange. There's an exercise there. But for time's sake, I'm going to skip that. So we go over the other thing about money, and this, I'm taking this from my main man Jason Fladlin here, is like, when you talk about something that's expensive or is a bigger investment, you got to address the elephant in the room. Like, yeah, it's not cheap, and we know it's not cheap because we didn't invent it to be cheap. We designed this to be impactful. And so we could have came out, looked every single way to cut costs, put the most minimal effort into what we designed. But if we did that, you'd be getting the least quality version of our best selves. Instead, we did the exact opposite. We thought about you first, and we said, look, we want to give them the highest version of our best self. And when we think from that frame, we thought about all the amazing ways that we can help you succeed in a faster time frame. So, of course, you can go buy the cheap version, but if you're looking for, and then you could say, the superior, the more, the program and the superior thinking and the superior process, and you want to be in that kind of environment, well, now you're in the right place. Okay. So there's a couple ways to do that at the pitch, and then on my pre-pitch, that's where I'll hammer that down and make it reward them for believing that investing in themselves is the number one priority they should be doing. This is all happening on the morning or right after lunch on day one. That's when you want this. Okay. Now, 2 more quick tips, and then I'm gonna let you go for now. I had said earlier, what I meant to say was you can send this book, which I recommend it. But if you have case studies already and success stories, or you just have even a stick letter that reminds them of how great of a decision they made of coming to this, because you don't want people to not show. This is also true with live challenges or live events. They need to believe that magic is happening at the thing. Okay. But they also want to believe that it's possible for them. How do people believe it's possible for them? Well, we do that by giving them example after example after example. There's a structure on that. What I usually like doing is looking at, tell me about your range of your best clients. And then, like, when I was in dentistry, it was like, well, small town is here. We had bigger suburb, and then we had East Coast, West Coast, Florida, right? And so I like getting a big range of that. So when we do our marketing, there's something that everybody can latch on and be onto and be like, yeah, that's me. Okay, that's me. That's me. Okay, so hope you guys are liking this. If you like any of this, you could private message me at ed@offerwingman.com, or you can comment in the, if you're watching this on Facebook, and you could just, or on YouTube, you make something comments. One of my team members will reach out to you, and we could tell you how we could do this Offer Wingman process for you. Or go to offerwingman.com. You can pick up our book that's coming out in the next couple of weeks. So the last thing, there's two last things I want to share with you. Like, number one is the panel. I'm going to do a whole video on the panel, but the panel, again, you want at least 3 to 5 people, not more than that. I've seen some people put 20 people up there. Is that a bad thing? No. Some people, I think it can get long and redundant. Because I think it should be about 35 minutes total, and it's a nice segue into either your pitch or the ending of a session. Okay, it's super important. I like doing that on day one. You could do the panel on day 2. Again, depends on each expert, has a different little flow. If you are an expert, your first talk on day 1 should include randomly calling on 3 to 4 people in the audience in a way where the audience thinks you're just accidentally, spontaneously doing it. But you should have that planned out. And again, that's another way to like start seeding the whole thing. You let them know, hey, I'm going to call on you. And you only call on your mastermind members or coaching club members or people that you want everyone else to aspire to be like, because you're going to turn them into little celebrities. So don't go pick someone that you don't really like too much, who's kind of a nuisance in the group, and then give them the microphone, because people are going to be following around. Sorry about that, guys. Around the next 2 days, asking questions. How do I get in the group? How do I get it? What do I do? And so that's a way to do it there. I think that's the last thing I'm going to talk about today. Hopefully you found this valuable. I will say this. I started off talking about being interviewed. I interview experts to promote their services and coaching club, because the video podcast style can act as a very powerful sales tool if it's done appropriately. And so the same structure that you would follow like in a webinar, the same structure that you'd follow like in a sales letter, is the same structure I follow when I interview people. You go problem, agitate, solve, headline, and then you go bullet point. I make the call out. We bring them in. You do the whole origin story of the expert. We bring them through the different benefits and what these people need to know, because we want to create transformational insight. And then we obliterate objections in the interview. That's a super powerful setup prior to them ever getting in your funnel. And it's also a super powerful thing you can send them before they ever get to your event. Now, I tell everybody this. I'm like, why do you think we do video podcasts as a sales tool? And the room kind of goes silent. And I said, because high achievers listen to podcasts, but they don't necessarily like sitting on a 35-minute sales pitch. Does that make sense? So if you want to influence people, you have to get access to people. If they know they're being sold, the guards go up. So a lot of our selling, virtual and in person, is done before they even know they've been sold. It's done sideways. It's organic. It should feel good for them. They should, and then when you get to the pitch, they should be like, I'm already in. Like, what's the details? Let's roll. And there's different ways to get people to rush to the back of this back table to like sign up quicker. We'll talk about that in a future video. So if you like all this, please subscribe to this channel. But then again, if you need help with it, email me, ed@offerwingman.com, and put a comment. Let me know if you like any of this stuff. I'll do more videos like this. This is easy for me to do. I like helping people. I like bragging about other people a heck of a lot more than I ever like talking about myself. Trust me on that. And that's all I got for you today. So until next time, have an amazing day. And thanks for hanging out with me. And yeah, just make it a great day. All right, bye-bye.